Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cha Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtapraye Shavadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with our discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 21, the Gopis glorify the song of Krishna's flute. Text number 16 onwards. Drishtva tapi vraj pashun sah ram gopah sancharayant manu venum udirayantam prema pravrid uditah kusumavala libhi sakyur vyadhat svapusham buddha atapatram. In the company of Balram and the other cowherd boys, Lord Krishna is continually vibrating his flute as he herds all the animals of Braj, even under the full heat of the summer sun. Seeing this, the cloud in the sky has expanded himself out of love. He is rising high and constructing out of his own body, with its multitude of flower-like droplets of water, an umbrella for the sake of his friend. Srila Prabhupada says in Krishna book, the scorching heat of the autumn sunshine was sometimes intolerable, and therefore the clouds in the sky appeared in sympathy above Krishna and Balram and their boyfriends while they engaged in blowing their flutes. The clouds served as a soothing umbrella over their heads just to make friendship with Krishna. See, everybody wants to serve Krishna in Vrindavan. Purna Pulinda Urugaya Padabjara Shri Kumkumena Daitastan Manditena Tadarshana Smara Rujastrana Rushtena Limpantya Anan Kucheshu Jahustatadeham. The Aboriginal women of the Vrindavan area become disturbed by lust when they see the grass marked with reddish kumkum powder. Endowed with the color of Krishna's lotus feet, this powder originally decorated the breasts of his beloved. And when the Aboriginal women smear it on their faces and breasts, they feel fully satisfied and give up all their anxiety. Srila Prabhupada explains this verse as follows. The Aboriginal girls became fully satisfied when they smeared their faces and breasts with the dust of Vrindavan, which was reddish from the touch of Krishna's lotus feet. So Aborigines girls were very lusty, but when their lovers touched their breast, the girls were not very much satisfied. When they came into the midst of the forest, they saw that while Krishna was walking, some of the leaves and creepers of Vrindavan had turned reddish from the kumkum powder which fell from his lotus feet. His lotus feet are held by the gopis on their breasts, which are smeared with kumkum powder. But when Krishna travels in the Vrindavan forest with Balram and his boyfriends, a reddish powder falls on the ground. So the lusty Aboriginal girls, while looking towards Krishna playing his flute, saw the reddish kumkum on the ground and immediately took it and smeared it over their faces and breasts. In this way, they became fully satisfied, although they were not satisfied earlier. All material lusty desires can become immediately satisfied if one comes in contact with Krishna consciousness. Another point that Acharyas have made it while describing Krishna's pastimes with gopis and these Aboriginal girls who were just looking at Krishna and smearing their bodies with the dust of Braj, that if we are not pure enough, if we are not eligible, if we are not qualified, then it is quite possible that we develop lusty desires reading these pastimes. And that is why Prabhupada used to be very careful. And even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his pastimes, he would not describe or discuss these confidential pastimes of Krishna. Confidential means the pastimes of Krishna with the gopis in detail with anybody except only three people. Three actually is called 3.5. The reason being, if we are not qualified and if by reading we develop lusty desires by reading these pastimes or these descriptions, then that will not be good for our spiritual life. Of course, as Prabhupada says, all material lusty desires can be immediately satisfied if one comes in contact with Krishna consciousness. But if it doesn't help in satisfying, if it brings out more and more lusty desires, so Acharya says, stop it right there. Don't go further. So we have to be very, very careful in reading these pastimes. So childhood pastimes, no problem at all. Anytime we can read. Is killing demons? Anytime. But these pastimes, when it deals with gopis and other girls, gopis and like aborigine girls, and of course Bhagavatam doesn't go in detail with the pastimes with Srimati Radharani, but the other literatures do. So we got to be careful. That's all. Hantayam adrir bala haridas varyo yad Ram Krishna charana sparash pramodaha manam tanoti sahago gana yos tayoryat paniya suya avasakandar kandamula. Of all the devotees, this Govardhan hill is the best. Oh, my friends, this hill supplies Krishna and Balram along with their calves, cows, and cowherd friends with all kinds of necessities. Water for drinking, very soft grass, caves, fruits, flowers, and vegetables. In this way, the hill offers respect to the Lord. Being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna and Balram, Govardhan hill appears very jubilant. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the opulence of Govardhan hill as follows. Paniya refers to the fragrant, cool water from the Govardhan waterfalls, which Krishna and Balram drink and use to wash their feet and mouths. Govardhan also offers other beverages such as honey, mango juice, and pilu juice. Suyavas indicates durva grass used to make the religious offerings of Arghya. Govardhan also has grass that is fragrant, soft, and conducive to the strong growth of cows and increased production of milk. Thus, this grass is used for feeding the transcendental herds. Gandhar refers to the caves where Krishna, Balram, and their friends play, sit, and lie down. These caves give pleasure when the weather is too hot or too cold, or when it is raining. Govardhan also features soft roots for eating, jewels for ornamenting the body, flat places for sitting, and lamps and mirrors in the form of smooth stones, glistening water, and other natural substances. So there are many other descriptions of Giraji in other literatures. So just by reading this paragraph, Govardhan Giraji offers so much to Krishna Balram and all the cowherd friends, and the gopis also, cows also. But now when we go do parikrama of Govardhan, we don't see all this. Well, because they're not manifested to our eyes, that's all. Otherwise, Govardhan has everything. That's why it's called Haridas Varya, the best of the devotees. So we have to develop those eyes, those spiritual eyes, to see all these things over there. Ga gopakar anuvanam nayato rudara venu swanah kalpadas tanu britsu sakhya aspandanam gatimatam pulakastarunam Niryoga Pasha Krita Lakshana Yor Vichitram. My dear friends, as Krishna and Balram pass through the forest with their cowherd friends leading their cows, they carry ropes to bind the cows' rear legs at the time of milking. When Lord Krishna plays on his flute, the sweet music causing the most moving living entities to become stunned and the non-moving trees to tremble with ecstasy. These things are certainly very wonderful. Krishna and Balram would sometimes wear their cowherding ropes on their heads and sometimes carry them on their shoulders, and thus they were very beautifully decorated with all the equipment of cowherd boys. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the ropes of Krishna and Balram were made of yellow cloth and have clusters of pearls at both ends. Sometimes they wear these ropes around their turbans, and the ropes thus become wonderful decorations. So even the ropes are so beautiful. Yellow cloth, silken cloth, and have clusters of pearls at both ends. So even the ropes become decorations when they put them on their turbans. Evam vida bhagavato ya vrindavanacharina varnayantyo mitho gopya kridastan mayatam yayu. Thus narrating to one another the playful pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he wandered about in the Vrindavan forest, the gopis became fully absorbed in thoughts of him. Actually, this should be the position, or this should be the end result of Shravanam and Kirtanam about Krishna, that Smaranam. And fully absorbed means almost Samadhi stage. In this regard, Srila Prabhupada comments, this is a perfect example of Krishna consciousness, to somehow or other remain always engrossed in the thoughts of Krishna. The vivid example is always present in the behavior of the gopis. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya declared that no one can worship the Supreme Lord by any method that is better than the method of the gopis. The gopis were not born in very high Brahman or Kshatriya families. They were born in the families of Vaishyas and not in big mercantile communities, but in the families of cowherd men. They were not very well educated, although they heard all sorts of knowledge from the Brahmins, the authorities of Vedic knowledge. The gopis' only purpose was to remain always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. Here Prabhupada does say they are not very well educated, but they had heard all sorts of knowledge from the Brahmins about Krishna and the Vedic knowledge also. So they knew everything. And later on, when we study the kind of arguments gopis give based on the scriptures, it's amazing. It doesn't feel like that they are just simple cowherd girls. But that also one of the reasons is they are devotees of Krishna. Krishna is the source of all the knowledge, every knowledge. So Krishna is sitting in their hearts. Krishna is sitting in their minds. Krishna is sitting everywhere in their thought process. So any knowledge comes from Krishna. So they have all the knowledge. So gopis are fully absorbed in thoughts of him, even if he is in front of them or he is not in front of them, completely absorbed. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no one can worship Supreme Lord by any method that is better than the method of the gopis. So thus ends the purport of 10th canto, 21st chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Gopis Glorify the Song of Krishna's Flute. So we still have time, so we can go to next chapter, chapter 22. Krishna steals the garments of the unmarried gopis. Shri Shukavacha, Hemante Prathame Masi, Nanda Vraja Kamarika, Cherur Havishyam Bhunjana, Katyayani Archan Vratam. Shukdev Goswami said, during the first month of the winter season, the young unmarried girls of Gokul observed the vow of worshipping goddess Katyayani. For the entire month, they ate only unspiced khichdi. The word Hemante refers to the month of Margashirsha, from approximately the middle of November to the middle of December, according to the Western calendar. In chapter 22 of Krishna book, Prabhupada comments that the gopis first ate havishyana, a kind of food prepared by boiling together moong dal and rice without any spices or turmeric. According to Vedic injunction, this kind of food is recommended to purify the body before one enacts a ritualistic ceremony. So this time, Margashirsha happens starts on the day after Kartik. And that is that's when we see the calendar, it says Katyayani Vrata starts. And then when 1 month later, when it ends. So whole month, they would eat only khichdi made by boiling moong dal and rice together without any spices or turmeric. It's very good for the body, for cleansing purpose. Aplutyambasi kalindya jalante chodite arune kritva pratikritam devim anurchur nripa sekatim gandhar malya surabhibhir balibhir dhup deepakah uchavachescha upahara praval fal tandula. My dear king, after they had bathed in the water of Yamuna, just as the sun was rising, means so early in the morning, and that too, November, December time, it's very cold in Vrindavan. The gopis made an earthen deity of goddess Durga on the river bank. Then they worshipped her with such aromatic substances as sandalwood pulp, along with other items, both opulent and simple, including lamps, fruits, betel nuts, newly grown leaves, and fragrant garlands and incense. The word balibhi in this verse indicates offering of clothing, ornaments, food, and so on. Katyayani Mahamaye Mahayogi Nadhishwari Nanda Gopasutam Devi Patimme Kurute Namaha Iti Mantram Japantyastya Pujam Chakru Kamarika Puja Chakru Kumarika. Each of the young unmarried girls performed her worship while chanting the following mantra. O goddess Katyayani, O great potency of the Lord, O possessor of great mystic power and mighty controller of all, please make the son of Nanda Maharaj my husband. I offer my obeisances unto you. So normally in Bhagavatam and other places in Bhagavad Gita and other places in Bhagavatam, Prabhupada always told us not to worship demigods. Do not worship demigods. Only people with less intelligence, they worship demigods. But gopis are worshipping Devi, Durga. But their purpose, their only aim is what? Please make the son of Nanda Maharaj my husband. They're not worshipping her for anything material. They wanted Krishna as their husband. And that's why this worship is okay. According to various acharyas, the goddess Durga mentioned in this verse is not the illusory energy of Krishna called Maya, but rather the internal potency of the Lord called Yogamaya. The distinction between the internal and external or illusory potency of the Lord is described in the Narad Pancharatra in the conversation between Shruti and Vidya. The Lord's inferior potency, known as Durga, is dedicated to his loving service. Being the Lord's potency, this inferior energy is not different from him. There is another superior potency, whose form is on the same spiritual level as that of God himself. Simply by scientifically understanding this supreme potency, one can immediately achieve the supreme soul of all souls, who is the Lord of all lords. There is no other process to achieve him. That supreme potency of the Lord is known as Gokuleshwari, the goddess of Gokul. Her nature is to be completely absorbed in love of God, and through her one can easily obtain the primeval God, the Lord of all that be. This internal potency of the Lord has a covering potency known as Mahamaya, who rules the material world. In fact, she bewilders the entire universe, and thus everyone within the universe falsely identifies himself with the material body. So Mahamaya, here it is mentioned in the scripture, she is a covering of internal potency. So in the material world, Mahamaya works, and she bewilders everybody in the universe. From the above, we can understand that the internal and external, or superior and inferior potencies of the Supreme Lord are personified as Yogamaya and Mahamaya, respectively. The name Durga is sometimes used to refer to the internal superior potency, as stated in Pancharatra. In all mantras used to worship Krishna, the presiding deity is known as Durga. Thus, in the transcendental sound vibrations, glorifying and worshipping the absolute truth, Krishna, the presiding deity of the particular mantra or hymn, is called Durga. The name Durga therefore refers also to that personality who functions as the internal potency of the Lord and who is thus on the platform of Shuddha Sattva, pure transcendental existence. This internal potency is understood to be Krishna's sister, also known as Ekanansha or Subhadra. This is a Durga who was worshipped by the gopis in Vrindavan. So in Vrindavan, they didn't worship Maha or material world Durga, but it was spiritual, Yogamaya. Several acharyas have pointed out that ordinary people are sometimes bewildered and think that the names Mahamaya and Durga refer exclusively to the external potency of the Lord. Even if we accept hypothetically that the gopis were worshipping the external Maya, there is no fault on their part, since in the pastime of loving Krishna, they were acting as ordinary members of society. Srila Prabhupada comments in this regard. The Vaishnavas generally do not worship any demigods. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has strictly forbidden all worship of the demigods for anyone who wants to advance in pure devotion service. Yet the gopis were beyond compare in their affection for Krishna, were seen to worship Durga. The worshippers of demigods also sometimes mention that the gopis also worship goddess Durga. But we must understand the purpose of the gopis. Generally, people worship the goddess Durga for some material benediction. Here, the gopis could adopt any means to satisfy or serve Krishna. This was the super excellent characteristics of the gopis. They worshipped goddess Durga completely for 1 month in order to have Krishna as their husband. Every day they prayed for Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, to become their husband. Conclusion is that a sincere devotee of Krishna will never imagine any material quality to exist in the transcendental gopis, who are the most exalted devotees of the Lord. The only motivation in all their activities was simply to love and satisfy Krishna. And if we foolishly consider their activities to be mundane in any way, it will be impossible for us to understand Krishna consciousness. So not only gopis here, even later on when we study about Rukmani Devi, she also worshipped Durga in her place to attain Krishna as her husband. So the point is, gopis, they're wholeheartedly, they're only thinking of Krishna, surrendering to Krishna, satisfying Krishna. So we cannot imitate them, first of all. We cannot say, oh, I also want Krishna as my husband, and then it's okay for me to worship Durga ji. Because we are not there wholeheartedly that we want only Krishna. You know, people generally worship Durga for some material benefits. And then there could be some issues with our service, our worship, our dedication. So that is why demigod worship is not recommended for devotees. Evam masam vratam cheru kumarya krishna chetasah bhadrakalin samanarchur bhuyananda sutah patihi. Thus, for an entire month, the girls carried out their vow and properly worshipped the goddess Bhadrakali, fully absorbing their minds in Krishna and meditating upon the following thought: may the son of King Nanda become my husband. Ushasyuthaya gotra svara anyo anya baddhabhavaha Krishna munchara jagur yudhyantya kalindyam snatum anvaham. Each day they rose at dawn, calling out to one another by name. They all held hands and loudly sang the glories of Krishna while going to the Kalindi to take their bath. Wow. So each day, so these are little girls, Kumarika, they said. They rose at dawn, very early in the morning. And now, see, again, no envy in anybody's heart for any other Gopika or Kumarika. Calling out to one another by name, they all held hands and loudly sang the glories of Krishna while going to the Kalindi or Yamuna to take their bath. They're not envious. They were helping each other, in fact. Calling out to everybody, so come, do you get up early, let's go. And everybody's aim is same. They wanted to have Krishna as their husband. No enviousness, none whatsoever. This is what bhakti is. This is devotional service. Of course, we are at such a low level, at the first rung of devotional service. But this is the topmost perfection of devotional service. All the gopis, this is what they display. So anyway, we'll stop here. See anybody has any comments or questions.
Prabhuji, Sita Maya also worshipped Durga Devi for Ramji, if I'm not wrong. I read somewhere in Tulsidas Ramayan.
Mm-hmm. So yes, their aim is to not to have any material benedictions, only to have Lord as their husband.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji.